My husband, 33-year-old male, and I, 31-year-old female, have been together for 10 years and married for 7. We have a 2-year-old little girl. My husband was diagnosed with schizophrenia 6 months ago. He had an episode and I immediately took him to the hospital because he was so out of it. He stayed for a week and was released on medication with follow-ups with a doctor in town. Before all of this, he was a very loving and attentive husband and father. He and I were pretty happy, and I fully believed I'd grow old with him. I felt safe with him. He knows all of my secrets. He is my person. I adored him. My husband thought his first episode was just because he had been so stressed at work and wasn't serious. He didn't think it would happen again, and we worked on making it a little less stressful for him. He did end up not taking his medication because he thought it was unnecessary. A month ago, he had another episode, and it was really bad. He asked me for a glass of water, and by the time I brought it to him, he didn't recognize me at all. He thought I was trying to poison him and hit me in the face. He hit me hard enough to break multiple bones, and I've permanently lost vision in my left eye. His wedding band caught my eye and also cut my face. I was terrified he would attack our daughter, so I ran out and called for help. Our daughter was not in the room with him. I went to her to make sure he couldn't get to her. He was also taken to the hospital due to his altered mental state. I didn't press anything and basically told everyone it was an accident. I know logically that it wasn't him doing that. Once my husband came back around to reality and saw the damage he had done, he was inconsolable for a while. He hasn't skipped a single dosage since then and is taking therapy seriously. He was absolutely horrified that my injuries were his fault, and he could have hurt our daughter in that state. He has apologized profusely, and still his hand shakes when he touches my face. He still breaks down often over my injuries and is very apologetic. The problem is I can no longer trust him. If he moves too fast, I jump. I'm afraid that he will hurt our child one day or attack me again. I have nightmares about it. I no longer feel safe. He knows all of this, and every time I flinch away from him, he looks like he is going to cry, but I can't really help it. I know it has not been even a full month since all of this happened, and in time it may get better, but then again, what if it gets worse? I am somewhat reassured by him taking it all seriously now, but I don't know if I will ever have that feeling of being safe with him again. So I've been considering divorce. I still love him, nothing has changed there, but there is now fear there. And I'm not sure I can pretend that everything is okay and go back to the way we were before. TDLR, my husband has schizophrenia and severely hurt me during an episode when he did not recognize me. He is horrified about it and is taking it all very seriously. But I no longer feel safe, nor do I feel safe about him being around our daughter. I know it may get better with time, but it also may not. So I am considering divorce. I love him, but I am also afraid of him now. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. A friend of mine is schizophrenic. He broke into someone's house. They were on vacation, so he lived there for a few days. The people eventually came back from vacation. He thought they were breaking into his house and almost beat the entire family to death. He caused permanent damage to several of them, including children. My friend is a very nice guy who didn't take his medication, and this disease made him do something horrible. He really almost ended the life of these people and is in prison for attempted unalive and many other charges. I don't think a divorce is unreasonable. I don't think I could forgive my partner for not taking something seriously and then attacking me and doing permanent damage to my eye, for putting my child in danger. No, I don't think I could let that go. What if you stay and it's fine for a while, and then a few years down the line he forgets to take his meds, or they stop working for some reason? It's not worth the risk for you or your daughter. It's not your husband's fault, and it's sad. But you need to do what is best for you and your child. You will never feel safe because you will never be safe. At the very least, move out until you figure things out. Comment 2. I've had similar experiences with 2 different people. One schizophrenic family member and a bipolar friend I was living with. It is 100% understandable that this has affected you and your relationship significantly, and it does not reflect negatively on you if you are not able to get past it. I would strongly urge you to get individual therapy, preferably with someone experienced in trauma. There's a decent chance you have PTSD or something similar. I know I do. Trying to just get past it or forget it, or simply will yourself to view him the way you did before this incident, will simply never work. But it's also completely possible that you'll find that you simply cannot feel safe around him anymore. As others have suggested, you may need to take some time apart so that you have space to heal. It's important that you can feel confident that both you and your daughter are safe. It's been years since the incident with my friend and roommate, but I will still start to have a panic attack if I see them around town. There's no way I could still live with them and maintain my sanity. Now, for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. Last week, my husband's sister, who's always been a bit of a troublemaker, decided to drop by unannounced. She's never really understood the gravity of his condition, always brushing it off as him being a little off or quirky. This time, she brought up the idea that maybe all he needed was a change of scenery, a vacation, to snap out of it. I couldn't believe her nerve, suggesting something so irresponsible after everything that's happened. I tried to keep my cool, but the conversation quickly escalated. She accused me of not being supportive enough, of wanting to lock him up and throw away the key. I snapped. I told her about the night he hit me, the fear, the hospital, the loss of vision in my eye. She went pale, finally grasping the severity of the situation. The aftermath was a mess. My husband overheard everything and was devastated that his sister had been so ignorant. He begged her to understand that his illness isn't something that can be cured with a simple getaway. She left in tears, and I was left to comfort him, reassuring him that we were on the same page about his treatment. But that wasn't the end of it. A few days later, my husband's boss called. He'd been missing work, and they were concerned. I had to explain his condition, something we'd kept private from his workplace. The call ended with his boss promising to hold his position for him. But the reality of our financial situation hit hard. We were already struggling with medical bills, and now the loss of income loomed over us. It was a wake-up call. I started looking for a job, something I hadn't needed to consider before. I found a part-time position at a local store, but the hours were long and meant less time at home with our daughter. Then, just when I thought we were finding our footing, my husband did something unthinkable. He gave away his car to a stranger, claiming the voices told him it was the right thing to do. It was a blow, not just because we needed that car, but because it showed he was still struggling more than he let on. I was furious, not just at him, but at the situation. We argued, and for the first time, I let out all the resentment I'd been holding back. I told him how his illness was affecting our daughter, how I was scared every day that I'd come home to another disaster. He listened, tears streaming down his face, and then he did something remarkable. He called his doctor and asked for an emergency session. He admitted that he'd been hiding symptoms, that he was scared too. It was a turning point for us. We went to the session together, and he agreed to a more aggressive treatment plan. It was a hard decision, but it was the right one. He started a new medication, and we saw improvements almost immediately. It's been pretty up and down, but things are slowly getting better. Our daughter is laughing more, and I'm not jumping at shadows as much. My husband's more present, more himself. It's not perfect, and I'm still wary, but there's a glimmer of hope that wasn't there before. Thanks for reading this far. It means a lot. Aita for leaving my husband after he became abusive and tried to track my car. I, 32-year-old female, have been married to my husband, 35-year-old male, for 2 years. We have been together for 6 years. Things used to be good. We have an infant son who is just under a year old. My husband has severe anger issues that have gotten worse with time. His anger used to only rear its head when he had too much to drink, and even then it was mostly directed at others who he felt had wronged him, not at me. When I got pregnant, we both stopped drinking. Somehow his anger worsened. These days he spirals out of control at things that I feel most people would shrug off. In the last 3 days, he's gotten mad at me because I didn't measure the coffee scoop to water ratio correctly. My cat got trapped in the guest bedroom and didn't have access to his litter box overnight, and ended up peeing on one of his shirts. My husband woke up first and found it. While I was asleep, he came in the bedroom and rubbed it in my pillow. He thought I gave him a dirty look as I was carrying a plate of waffles, so he smashed the glass plate out of my hand onto the floor. We have no real issues aside from this. We are more than comfortable financially on my income. And when the baby was born, He quit his job to be a stay-at-home dad and build his own business. This was a joint decision as I like my job and it allows us to live very comfortably. Now, though, he's increasingly accusing me of liking my job because I must be cheating. I'm not. We knew each other before we got together. Back then, I was dating a very successful man. It didn't work out and we broke up amicably. There were no hard feelings, but we didn't remain friends and don't keep in contact. My husband still throws him in my face when he gets mad. That is, why don't you call up X? I'm sure you'd love to suck his CEA. Are you still talking to him? When's the last time you talked? I have been called every name in the book. W and loser are his favorites. Fat ass also struck a certain chord when I was 3 weeks postpartum after an emergency C-section. I am now back to my pre-baby body. I have always liked to look nice and valued my time at the gym, but he has a problem with my gym time now, as he also thinks that means I'm cheating there too. It's exhausting and I am so tired. I walk on eggshells to keep the peace. Today, the straw that broke the camel's back was him firing off a barrage of angry texts at my mom and sister, who have never been anything but kind to him. He ultimately blew my sister's proposal and revealed the date time it will happen, which was supposed to be a surprise. He refuses to apologize, saying that my sister shouldn't be marrying my future brother-in-law because his family comes from money, and therefore, he must be entitled. I told him I want to separate because I don't want our child to grow up thinking this is normal behavior. My husband grew up in a very poor, broken home and refuses to see that he is perpetuating the cycle. He says being with me makes him feel terrible about himself and that I seem like I hate him. Today, he woke me up by walking in the bedroom and announcing, "I feel like I'm wasting my life with you." I later learned this was the result of him being unable to find one of his tools in the garage this morning. I told him that all I ever wanted was for him to be kind to me and the people I care about, like he was for the first several years we were together. Now he is accusing me of breaking up our family and taking his child from him. He is convinced there is someone else waiting for him to be out of the picture so they can steal his family. I will say he does not show his anger in front of our child and absolutely adores the baby. I love their relationship. How do I make him understand that my decision isn't out of hatred or infidelity? I've asked him to get help and he just says that he knows what they will tell him and that it won't help. I am sad, but I have been grieving this relationship for the better part of a year and I am ready to get it over with. I just want to deal with this in the most respectful, concise, and painless way possible. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Your husband isn't confused. He knows he is hurtful, and he knows he enjoys it. He is angry that you won't stick around and let him abuse you more. But he isn't confused. I wouldn't be so quick to conclude that he doesn't also take his anger out on the baby when he's unsupervised. Your son is too young to tell you what happens when they're alone. It might be prudent to put some nanny cams in place. Comment 2. He is harassing you horribly, and he's not even keeping a mask on for your family anymore. He doesn't direct his anger at your baby yet. You don't have to get him to understand that you're not cheating in order to leave. For your safety and your child's safety, you just need to leave. Now, for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So, after I told my husband I wanted to separate, things went from bad to worse. He started going through my phone while I was asleep, looking for evidence of cheating. Of course, he found nothing because there was nothing to find. But that didn't stop him from creating stories in his head. He accused me of having secret apps to communicate with my supposed lover. It was ridiculous. Then, one day, I came home from work early and caught him in the act of something I never thought he'd do. He was trying to install a tracking device on my car. When I confronted him, he said it was for my safety, but the look in his eyes told me it was because he didn't trust me. I was furious and felt so violated, but here's where it gets even messier. My sister, the one whose proposal he ruined, she's been having her own issues. Turns out, her fiancé has been cheating on her with her best friend. The whole thing blew up when she walked in on them together. My sister was devastated, and my husband had the nerve to say, "I told you so," about her fiancé's character. In the midst of all this chaos, my mom sat me down for a talk. She revealed a family secret that shook me to my core. My dad, who I always thought was a saint, had a whole other family before us. He abandoned them and never looked back. My mom knew and kept it a secret all these years. She told me because she didn't want me to stay in a bad situation like she did. I was reeling from this news when my husband did something unforgivable. He took our son and disappeared for a whole day. No calls, no texts, nothing. I was out of my mind with worry. When he finally came back, he said he wanted to show me what it would feel like to lose them. It was a twisted way to make me stay, but I had enough. I called a lawyer and started the process of filing for divorce and a restraining order. I couldn't let my son grow up thinking this was how you treat people you love. The aftermath was tough. My husband tried to turn our friends against me, saying I was the one with the problem. But the truth always comes out. People started seeing his true colors when he lost his temper in public. It was a sad sight. And even though I resented him for everything, I also pitied him. In the end, I got full custody of our son. My husband was given supervised visitation rights after he agreed to go to anger management and therapy. It's a small step, but I hope for our son's sake he gets better. I'm rebuilding my life now, focusing on my son and my job. It's not easy, but I'm getting there. My sister is also moving on from her broken engagement. We're supporting each other through these tough times. Thanks for reading this update. Aita for not wanting to foster my ex-wife's kid, but then taking money to do it. Hello, I'm feeling quite overwhelmed by a current family emergency and would very much appreciate an outside perspective. I have 2 kids with my ex-wife. We divorced 11 years ago. All things considered, I'd say I did pretty well after the divorce. Went back to school, got a new career I love, met a wonderful lady, and got remarried, and I have split custody of my 2 kids. The ex and I do not get along very well. I could talk a lot about her, but most of it will come across as bashing my ex. So I'll call it suffice to say I've been counting the days until my daughter turns 18, and I can finally stop dealing with their mother. I try to keep my contact with her to the minimum necessary to handle stuff for my kids. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago, I got a very frantic call from my son when they were at their mother's. He asked me to come pick them up because their mom was arrested. Of course, I zoomed over and found them waiting at her house with a police officer. The cop wouldn't tell me much about what she got arrested for, but said she would not be returning for a while and asked me to verify that the kids were mine. I told him that the 2 older kids are mine, but I have no biological relation to the youngest. So he released my 2 kids to me and took their half-brother to a kid's home for the time being. I should mention I do know who his biological father is, and that person's not going to get custody of any children ever again. For what it's worth, their mom is a nurse, and we found out later she was arrested because they believed she was stealing pills from work. I called my current wife on the way home, and she immediately agreed with keeping them permanently and had their room all ready to go by the time we pulled in. But before we were even back, my kids were asking if we could take in their half-brother. As I explained to them, I feel terrible for that kid. I am genuinely sorry he is one more person who is effectively being punished by something their mom did. He seems like a nice kid from what interactions I've had with him, but we just cannot take him right now. We do okay financially, but it's not like we're rolling in money, and another child to feed would be a heavy burden. And we live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and there just is not enough room for them to squeeze another person into the bedroom the kids share. On top of all that, he is not my kid, and I have no idea if I would even be allowed to take him in. He has been in some kind of foster situation for the last couple weeks since all of this went down. I'm perfectly willing to do everything I can to make sure they can go and see him and spend time with him, but I just do not feel like we could take him in right now. My kids have asked every day for me to change my mind, and I do genuinely wish I could. But then today my wife sat down with me and told me that while it would make things tight, she is also starting to think maybe we should ask about fostering him. My wife is pretty level-headed, so I usually trust her judgment on stuff, and it gave me pause to think, maybe I've been wrong to be so dismissive of the idea. She didn't say to do it, but asked me to think about it. Would it be crazy to bring this kid into our home? Assuming he stays long-term, based on the issues with his mom that seems likely, we would undoubtedly need to get a bigger place. Plus, more food, more clothes, school stuff, etc. It would also potentially mean more dealing with their mother, which I hate. but it would make my kids happy. Maybe it is worth it. Am I being too stubborn when I say no to taking in my kid's half-sibling? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. It sounds like your concerns are primarily practical, money, space, etc., rather than emotional. So, it might be worth having a proper sit-down with your wife and talking through those concerns with an open mind. Money will be tighter, but can you make it work? Is moving somewhere bigger actually feasible? What are the actual legalities of you fostering this child? Have the conversation with an open mind, and if the outcome is that you really can't support this kid as well, be honest with your kids about why that is. They're old enough to understand these things, even if they don't like the outcome. Comment 2. If you foster, do you not get a stipend from the government? This child is your children's brother. He will always be their brother. I would advise perhaps not to punish the child for the sins of the parents, and to foster that relationship your children have. Again, fostering the kid isn't adopting him, but should give you insight into the path ahead. Best of luck to you. Now for the update. Thanks for all the comments on my last post. Things have escalated since then, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, my ex-wife's parents got involved. They're well off, and they've always looked down on me since the divorce. Out of nowhere, they filed for custody of my kids, claiming I was an unfit father because I refused to take in their half-brother. Can you believe that? They actually tried to use my decision against me to rip my kids away. I was furious. I couldn't let that happen. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I reached out to my ex's ex, the biological father of the youngest kid. He's not the best guy, but he still has some influence. I convinced him to talk to my ex-in-laws to tell them they were making a mistake. It was a long shot, but it worked. He must have said something that hit home because they dropped the custody case like a hot potato. But that wasn't the end of it. My ex-in-laws, feeling guilty or maybe just wanting to save face, offered to pay for a larger apartment so we could take in the half-brother. They said it was the least they could do after the mess they caused. My wife and I talked it over, and we decided to accept their offer. We moved into a 3-bedroom place, and the kids were over the moon when we told them their half-brother would be joining us. The day we brought him home was something else. My kids were ecstatic, and even the little guy seemed to understand that this was a new start for him. But the real shock came when my ex was released on bail. She showed up at our new place, begging to see her kids. I wanted to slam the door in her face, but I couldn't. Not in front of the kids. So I let her in. She was a mess, crying and apologizing. She promised she was going to get help, get clean, and make things right. I didn't believe a word of it, but my kids, they still love her, you know? They ate it up. It was tough to watch. Now, here's where I got my revenge. Though I didn't plan it. My ex-in-laws were there too to see the new apartment they were paying for. They saw my ex, and they saw how the kids reacted to her, and then they did something unexpected. They told her that they would only continue to support her if she stayed clean and stayed away from the kids until she was better. They said it was her last chance. She agreed. I don't know if she meant it, but she agreed. And just like that, I had the upper hand. I had my kids, their half-brother, a new apartment, and my ex was on a tight leash, all thanks to her own parents. It's been pretty hard on us, but things are finally settling down. The kids are adjusting, and so am I. We're a family, a bigger, slightly unconventional family, but it's working. And my ex, well, she's got her own battles to fight. I just hope for the kids' sake, she wins them this time. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.